Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today.
Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Today we have Sharon LaCour. She is the author of The Meeting of Air and Water. I'm super excited because just 3 weeks ago, I went to New Orleans for the first time. So at least I have a little context to your novel. But jump in and tell us about, I read some of the reviews on your website, which were glowing. So jump in and tell us about the novel, the characters, what we can expect.
Oh, okay. Well, the novel takes place in two different time periods. It takes place in the 20s and in the 80s, both in a little Cajun town along coastal Louisiana, Cajun fishing town, and in the city of New Orleans in the 20s and in the 80s. And for those who may not really understand what the word Cajun is, maybe I should just do a little background of that. So in Louisiana, there's a very large population of people who were expelled from Nova Scotia in Canada in the middle of the 18th century. So they had settled there along with, all the other migrants who had come to the New World a good, decades and decades earlier, and had settled in Canada and made a great life for themselves, fishing and trapping and building, a life for themselves, and obviously populated the area. Then the English, then a war happened, and the English expelled them from Nova Scotia. In fact, rounded them up, told them they had to leave, and took away their homes. And many of them ended up back in France for a few years or for the rest of their lives. Others ended up in Maryland, some in the Caribbean, but the majority ended up here in Louisiana. So those are called Acadians, and the diminutive term for them is Cajun or Cajun. They brought their language with them, and it's still a vibrant part of Louisiana culture. My daddy was Cajun, and my mother was part Cajun, and so my dad grew up speaking French as his first language. So it's a really interesting culture. They're a real determined people, very, very welcoming and warm people. As long as you show that you're interested in them. And so I moved recently into the part of Louisiana that is where most of the descendants of those people live. I grew up in New Orleans, which is really not where the majority of Cajuns moved to. They moved to the coastline and to the southwestern and along the bayous, So I never really lived in this Acadian part of the state. And they are the most wonderful people, and they tell me, "Oh, you're from New Orleans, you're not really like one of us." Then I explained, well, and my heritage is so. So anyway, the book is about the Cajun people along the coast of Louisiana. And then it's specifically about a young woman who receives the gift of a camera. She's a young girl, actually, when she gets the camera, and she's a very sensitive individual. In today's parlance, we might call her on the spectrum. She has trouble engaging with the world. So she uses the camera as a way to make the world an easier place for her to process. And then it goes on from there where she becomes quite a good photographer. She moves to New Orleans, but she struggles in being able to pursue her art in the 1920s in an environment where women and the arts are not especially celebrated. And she has a lot of struggles against society and cultural norms to pursue her art. And then the next parts of the book that take place later are her granddaughter coming back and discovering her grandmother's life and art. That's kind of a little background for it.
Right. That sounds like such a touching story. I was I was wondering if this book would be a liken to something like Where the Crawdads Sing.
Uh-huh.
And that it sounds like you have that historical relevance and a personal story of one character as well as the generational discovery of that history, which sounds really rich.
Yeah, the emphasis of the book is quite different from that book, and but it does have the generational aspects of it. Um, we do go through Dolores's whole life in the course of the book, but in a different. I would say it's a more intimate book in the sense that it focuses really on this family, and not yeah, not the regional aspects of that book. So
Right.
it's a
Yeah.
little
That
different.
book ended up being very tragic in my eyes. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And this book focuses a lot on the actual photography, which was inspired by a real person who was a Louisiana photographer who traveled the coast of Louisiana in the 1920s taking pictures of Cajuns. And so the cover of the book, so you can see the cover here, the
It's
cover
beautiful.
is one of his photographs of the bayou. And so in my novel, I picked um, a person who was based on his life and had him give her the camera. So the book
Oh,
really is
okay.
a lot about the artistic aspects of creation and of living that life of being a person who's creative and has to do that, is compelled to do it. So
Right. Interesting. So is it told through a third person point of view or first person point of view?
oh, good question. I do a lot of point of view is such an interesting part of what we do, isn't it? I mean, and choosing that and then having it work. I've worked a lot on that in my career, but it's told from third person close in Dolores's the main character's head, but and also in the head of her granddaughter in the 80s. And then but then various people, other people's points of view come up too. So it changes from chapter to chapter, but mostly it's in the points of view of those two main characters.
Okay. And
In third person though.
right. And you said it's her granddaughter coming back to
Yeah.
discover her work. So does her granddaughter discover the photos as well as maybe some journals, or is she piecing her life together?
Yeah, so the family has kept the grandmother's life as a secret, kind of. I mean, she knows about the grandmother, but she doesn't really know the extent of her artistic endeavors. So at some point, she's living with her grandmother's husband because the grandmother has passed away, and her grandpa gives her, she starts to find clues throughout the city. She starts to look at photographs in the city, and she puts two and two together. She starts to come up with some ideas, and then he finally says, okay, these are your grandmother's photographs. I have them in this box. I want you to do something with them. So she discovers them, and then she discovers more about the life of her grandmother.
Interesting. So how did you decide to tell the story of perhaps partially the Cajun people or the Cajun
Hmm.
experience in this way through this character?
um well, a lot of things came together for me in this book. I was really interested in generational trends, or not trends, but generational attributes that are carried down from grandmother to mother to without us even knowing.
Right.
Someone will say to you, wow, you look just like Aunt Bessie, when she used to do that with her hair. What and you'll be like, I don't even know who that is, but yet those things carry over. So that was part of my um decision in writing the book. And then the other stuff just started falling in, like finding these photographs and having them be about Cajun, in Cajun, Louisiana, and having been a Cajun myself. And so, and I've always been very interested in how the creative process and people who are sort of on the edge in dealing with life, how they, how that manifests in their art. So that's kind of why I chose a person like her to tell the story.
And is this your first novel?
This is the first one, yes.
Have you written other things?
Yes, I have quite a few stories published. And I'm working on two other novels right now. One of them is another Cajun story, earlier in history along the bayou of Louisiana, about a couple who moved to Louisiana in the late 1700s. And then the other one is a novel about a little girl, coming of age in during the Depression in Mississippi. So I have I'll reveal this to you. I don't tell many people, but I have a middle grade fantasy novel, which is really out of my comfort zone, but I love that kind of stuff. And I have it sitting there. It's all finished, but I'm just too afraid to do anything with it at this point. So,
Well, yeah, it seems like your creative endeavors are spreading as you go.
yes, exactly.
Have you been a lifelong writer?
I started writing really young, but then I didn't really pursue it in college. I became a musician, and I'm a piano teacher, by profession. So I started writing really in earnest, I would say when I was about 30, after college and after I got married and started having kids and everything. That's when I started really writing. So,
Okay. And so you are creative in other ways too.
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
I mean,
Musically, yeah.
yeah, because most authors I talk to have creative or creative background in writing, or some other creative
Yeah.
thing. But like I started my career in science and never really considered
Oh,
myself creative. So when this creative spark happened for me, it was totally out of the blue. I thought,
oh,
where did this come from?
oh,
So
interesting.
yeah. So I always like hearing people's stories of, how they became
Yeah.
a writer and an author.
Well, my mom wanted to be a writer, and she used to tell us stories at night just out of her head. We'd say, tell us a story. So she'd tell a story. And then later she started typing them up. But she always encouraged me to write. I'm not sure. I think maybe she wanted to, have me live out her dream or whatever. And as it turned out, it kind of worked out that way. She passed away 2 years ago, and encouraged me to write till the day she passed away. I mean, you're still writing, aren't you? Even though she couldn't at that point really read anything I was writing, that didn't really matter. So,
Yeah, it usually doesn't matter to your mom as long as you're happy, right?
yeah, exactly.
That's nice. So, the, are you planning to publish these next two novels?
Yes, I'm trying to decide honestly which one. I'm focusing more on one than the other, but I'm kind of trying to decide which one I should launch next, which would be the best, the most appealing to my readership that's kind of developed, over time. And, some people are advising me to work more on the Cajun one because this one has been successful, and other people think it's the other one. So I'm kind of torn. But yeah, I'm planning to, I just don't know which one would be the best way to go. So.
Right. That's hard to know, yes.
Mhm.
So do you write both books at the same time?
That's a good question. I usually don't, and I don't think it's a good I would never advise anyone to do that. But um I am kind of doing that. So like I spent the last 3 months focusing on one of them. And then I got to this point where I was like, okay, I need a break. So then I just kind of switched to the other one. And I think it's okay to take breaks like that. Um, I think it's good in some cases, to take a break. I mean, it's always good to take a break, I think, and put a book aside for a while. But even in this way, I've never done this before, and I think it's actually good for my process to put one away and then have something else completely different, that takes my mind in a completely different way. So I think that's going to work out, but maybe they'll both be much slower as far as the final product in coming
Well,
out.
I mean, but they may like you said, they may end up being better products because
Yeah.
you've taken some time and done something else, and then you can come back with a fresh eye and look at that work.
Yeah, I think so. That's my thinking right now about it. We'll see how
Right.
it plays
Well,
out.
whatever works for you, right? I
You're
mean,
right, exactly. Yeah.
so do you feel like Dolores, you have this like need to create based on, I mean,
Yeah.
through your work?
I'm not very happy when I'm not writing. I don't know if you feel that way, but I'm compelled to do it. And much more so now than, music was what I did for a long time. And now I'm much more compelled to write, and I just love it. I mean, I love spending 2 hours in a book in a place, that's completely different. And even the research, I love the research. So yeah, I guess in that way I am compelled, like she was.
Right. Well, I can imagine too. Yes, if you set the book in the 20s, there would have had to be, what resources did you use for your research?
Um, I had read quite a few books about Cajun history. And then my family history helped because I had a direct relationship with, the actual experience that the Acadians had. And then, there's a lot of books about New Orleans in that time period in the 20s. When you go back to the 1800s, it's harder and harder to find resources. So this book I'm writing now is a real challenge because it's, the 1780s. So that's really hard. But the 20s, it's easy to find, a lot of pictures and a lot of stuff that was happening. So, but you constantly have to question everything when you're doing something like that. If you want to be accurate, and look it up and make sure that you got that right. I mean, you can fudge a little bit on the dates, I think. I don't think people mind in fiction if you're not completely accurate with something happening, but the basic elements of it have to be accurate. So,
Well,
I do,
definitely, yes. If a
yeah,
reader knows something, they will call you out on it.
yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Well,
that's probably true. Well,
that's a
especially,
lot of,
this book, I mean, when I've given like talks here in this region, people relate a lot to this book because of the places, that are in there and so there are people in my mother's generation who still know about New Orleans in 1920s, and they'll
uh,
just tell me things, that I didn't even know
right.
that they know about it, and no one's called me out on anything, any errors yet. So we'll
Well,
see.
that's good.
Yeah.
That's very good. Yes, this is really timely for me. I think, I don't know if I was saying it before we were recording or when we started, but I went to New Orleans for the first time
Yeah.
a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago. But I didn't know that, and I knew that was French origin people that settled in the area, but I didn't realize they had first settled, in Nova Scotia in the Canadian area. And that's why they ended up in Louisiana. So that's very interesting to me.
Well, actually, so there's two different. The city of New Orleans was not really founded by that group.
Okay.
So the French came here long before. They came here as early as, the 1600s and started settling the city of New Orleans and the region. But the Cajuns came, and when they came in large numbers. So that was, around 1750 that started happening. And then Louisiana became part of the United States in 1803. So there was a period of about 50 years where they were still under French and Spanish, control. But there really aren't, I don't think, a lot of Cajuns in New Orleans itself. So you were right, it's French. New Orleans is more French, and then the Cajuns are kind of a separate part of Louisiana.
Okay, yeah, because I had in my mind I had combined those two
Oh,
as being like the same origin people. So
okay.
thank you for helping me understand that. I'm glad that I do now. And thank you for being here, Sharon LaCour.
Yeah,
Tell
well, that's cool. Did
everyone
you
where
enjoy
we
New
can.
Orleans?
Yes, Tell everyone where we can find you and your books.
Well, on my website, which is just my name.com, SharonLaCour.com, you can, there's a link, there's a lot of information about the book, and then there are links to where you can get it. And it's in some libraries. And I like to send people to bookstores. So if you go to bookshop.org, you can put in your favorite independent bookstore and you can purchase a book, any book, through Bookshop, and your favorite local bookstore will get some money for that book. So it's kind of a nice way to avoid giving all the money to Amazon. And so that's what I like to recommend.
Well,
So.
Great. Thank you so much, Sharon, for being here. Your book, The Meaning of Air and Water, the title kind of gives me goosebumps even. So I'm excited to read it, and hopefully we will have you back next time you release your next book.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you very much, Tricia. Thanks for all you do for writers too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.